of weeping for no reason? Do you remember there, like, when you're a teenager, you have raging hormones, so that's how you can identify it the best.
Everyone knows Suzanne Somers got fired from Three's Company, but that wasn't even close to her darkest secret. When she was desperate and broke, she got arrested for check fraud and spent time in jail. She had a secret abortion with a married man while they were hiding their affair from the world. ABC didn't just fire her from the show, they actively tried to destroy her career completely. Police escorts had to bring her to set because things got so hostile and her co-stars refused to speak to her for over 30 years. But what she did to survive afterward would create even bigger scandals. Suzanne Somers was born on October 16, 1946, in San Bruno, California. Her childhood wasn't just difficult, it was terrifying. Her father, Frank Mahoney, worked long hours doing physical jobs but came home every night drunk and full of rage. He was violent, unpredictable, and terrifying. Suzanne later said she lived in constant fear of being hurt or killed by him. Her mother, Marion, worked as a medical secretary, but no amount of order or stability could calm the chaos at home. Money was always short, and her father's drinking made everything worse. Fear was part of everyday life. Every night, she and her siblings would hide in closets, holding each other in silence, hoping they wouldn't be the next target. These weren't childish fears, they were real. Their father would scream for hours, sometimes until sunrise. Suzanne learned early to stay quiet, stay small, and not be seen. She barely slept and lived in constant anxiety, afraid of the smallest sound. It left deep scars on her mind and body. One of the lasting effects of this trauma was bedwetting. Suzanne wet the bed until nearly age 13. Her father didn't comfort her. He mocked her. He called her worthless. The shame was unbearable. She tried to hide it from everyone, but it only got worse when she learned her younger brother was struggling with the same thing. They were both broken in silence, made to feel like failures even as children. The humiliation stayed with her for life. On top of all this, Suzanne had dyslexia. Reading and writing were exhausting for her. She couldn't keep up at school. Her teachers didn't understand. Nobody did. They thought she was lazy, but in reality, she was surviving on almost no sleep and carrying heavy emotional pain. Her grades dropped and her confidence crumbled, but she still found joy in music and drama. It was the only place she felt like she mattered. By the time she was 14, she was desperate to break free. That's when she was expelled from Mercy High School after writing notes to a boy. She hadn't even sent them, but a nun found them, and it was over. Her shame and confusion only grew. The world kept punishing her for things it didn't understand. That expulsion became a symbol of her frustration. No one saw how hard she was trying to hold herself together. But everything boiled over at age 17. Her mother had sewn her a beautiful prom dress. It was a rare, bright moment. But her father, drunk again, stormed into her room. He tore the dress to pieces and called her nothing. That was it. Suzanne grabbed a tennis racket and hit him hard in the head. Blood poured everywhere. He had a concussion. While her mother took him to the hospital, Suzanne cleaned up the blood alone. It was splattered on the floors, the walls, even the white picket fence outside. That night changed everything. From then on, she refused to ever be alone with him again. Not long after, Suzanne made a desperate choice. She got pregnant on purpose. She thought it was the only way out. She left college, where she'd earned a music scholarship, and married Bruce Somers in 1965. She was 18. The marriage wasn't built on love, it was survival, but it didn't save her. She said later that the pregnancy and quick divorce only deepened her sense of failure. Her son, Bruce Jr., was born on November 8, 1965. Suzanne was 19. She loved her son, but her marriage was already falling apart. They were poor. They fought. She felt completely lost. There was no emotional connection. She described her home life as full of panic and fear. Her only bright light was her son, who later grew up to become a writer and director. But at the time, she felt like she was drowning. By 1967, it all collapsed. Suzanne had an affair with a former drama teacher. When her husband found out, the marriage ended. She was 21, alone, with a baby, and barely holding on. She blamed herself for everything. She admitted she became someone who lied, manipulated, and hid just to survive. She fell into crisis after crisis. There were arrests. There was a secret abortion after another affair. Her life was spinning out of control. But she kept going. With no education and no support, she turned to modeling in San Francisco. She took any job she could find. She stayed away from her older siblings, both alcoholics like their father. She was terrified she'd end up like them, so she pushed herself hard. She refused to follow the same path. In 1968, she became a prize model on a game show. That's where she met Alan Hamel, the man who would change her life. In 1969, she didn't expect anything major when she walked onto the set of the anniversary game. Alan Hamel was the host of the show. From the moment they locked eyes, something sparked. Even though Hamel had a wife, he and Somers started seeing each other in secret. Their connection was electric, and their affair quickly became one of the worst-kept secrets in Hollywood circles. Somers later admitted he had a charm that pulled in both women and men. What started as a risky romance soon became a long-term relationship, but it came at a price. Back then, having an affair, especially with a married man, was considered a serious scandal. Their love felt real, but it was born in shadows, and for a long time, they had to pretend it didn't exist. Things became even more complicated when Somers found out she was pregnant. Hamel was still married. She was already a single mother, trying to survive in a tough business. The pressure was too much. They made the heartbreaking decision to end the pregnancy. The abortion was kept secret, but the pain couldn't be hidden. It caused serious medical problems, and she was left shaken for days. Abortion wasn't talked about openly back then. It was taboo, and that secrecy only made the experience worse. She carried the emotional scars with her for years. It changed how she saw herself. It made her question her worth and whether she deserved love at all. The emotional damage didn't stop there. Somers later said, "Back then, I was lying, manipulating, hiding. I blamed myself for everything." She was constantly afraid. Every day felt like walking on eggshells, trying to protect her relationship while hiding the truth from the world. She even kept secrets from her own family. The guilt consumed her. It affected how she acted, how she trusted, and how she connected with others. She lived in fear that one wrong move could bring everything crashing down. And the more she lied, the more she felt like she was losing herself. In 1971, her world shook again. Her 6-year-old son, Bruce, was hit by a car. He nearly died. The accident was horrifying, but it also forced her to stop and seek help. She found a local health clinic where therapy for Bruce cost just $1. At first, it was just for him. But the therapist quickly realized that Suzanne needed help too. That was the beginning of something new. For the first time, she started facing the pain she had buried for so long. The sessions helped her and her son find a way to heal. And in a time when therapy was still seen as shameful, Suzanne took the brave step to open up. Then came the sentence that hit her like a truck. Her therapist looked her in the eye and said, "You have the lowest self-esteem of anyone I've ever met." It was hard to hear, but it finally made sense. Suzanne had grown up in a home filled with abuse and alcohol. She had spent her whole life pretending to be okay. Now she realized just how much she had been hurting. She finally understood why she clung to relationships, why she accepted pain, and why she felt like she didn't deserve more. That moment pushed her to make a change. She committed to deep therapy and didn't stop. The healing took years, but it worked. That pain, shame, and struggle became the foundation for the strong woman she later became. She used her journey to help others. In 1970, Suzanne Somers was at rock bottom. She had no money, no fame, and no clear path forward. Living in San Francisco, she wrote a $250 rent check that bounced. That small sum, worth more than $800 today, landed her in jail. The police arrested her for check fraud. Her car got impounded. She felt humiliated, powerless, and completely alone. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a wake-up call. She was a single mother, scraping by, and now she had a criminal record. That moment scared her, but it also lit a fire inside her. She promised herself she would never be in that position again. The next few years were no easier. She landed tiny roles on TV and in films, but they barely paid anything. Her name was often missing from the credits. Casting directors ignored her. Agents overlooked her. While chasing auditions, she also battled deep emotional wounds from her childhood. She knew she couldn't move forward until she dealt with the pain. So, she entered therapy. Not for a month or two, but for 3 full years. Those sessions became her anchor. They helped her rebuild her confidence. In 1971, tragedy struck when her son Bruce was injured in a serious car crash. The therapist who treated him only charged $1 a week, knowing she couldn't afford more. Every part of her life was a struggle, mental, emotional, and financial. To survive, she took whatever jobs she could find. Some days, she worked as a background extra for less than $100. Other days, she appeared in commercials for small local businesses. To make ends meet, she started selling chocolate desserts to restaurants. She even made handmade children's dresses for consignment shops. But no matter how hard she worked, there were still days when she had to choose: pay the electric bill or feed her son. There were no shortcuts, just rejection, anxiety, and constant fear. But she never gave up. Every tiny role felt like a win. Every commercial meant she could stay in the fight a little longer. Then, in 1976, everything changed. ABC was desperate. Their sitcom Three's Company had already failed twice. Fred Silverman, the network's president, took one last look at old audition tapes. He saw Suzanne Somers, someone he remembered from a guest spot on The Tonight Show. He made a bold call. She was hired just one day before they taped the final pilot. At that moment, Suzanne still carried all her old battles with her: the arrest, the poverty, the therapy, the years of being ignored. But none of that mattered when the cameras started rolling. When Three's Company hit TV screens in 1977, Suzanne Somers instantly became a star. Her role as Chrissy Snow, sweet, clueless, and always dressed to turn heads, made her a household name. Viewers fell in love with her giggle, her timing, and the playful innocence she brought to a show that dared to joke about cohabitation and gender roles during a time when TV had barely begun talking about sex. Within a year, she was named Favorite Female Performer at the People's Choice Awards. By 1979, she was up for a Golden Globe. Her image was everywhere: magazine covers, late-night talk shows, press junkets. At a time when women were demanding real visibility on screen, she was both a product of that moment and a symbol of how far things still had to go. But the chemistry you saw on screen didn't reflect what was really happening behind the scenes. Joyce DeWitt, who played Janet, had trained seriously as an actor. She saw the work as art. Somers saw it as business. That clash turned ugly fast. DeWitt felt sidelined, accusing Somers of hogging the spotlight and disrupting the ensemble balance. The more famous Somers became, the colder things got on set. And after a bitter pay dispute, the two women didn't speak for more than 30 years. In 1980, things exploded. Somers, backed by her husband and manager Alan Hamill, demanded equal pay to John Ritter. She was earning $30,000 per episode. Ritter, $150,000. They wanted parity, and they wanted 10% ownership of the show. That move stunned ABC. Other stars on less popular shows, like Alan Alda on MASH and Carol O'Connor on All in the Family, were already earning that much. But Somers was a woman. ABC had just caved to pay demands from Laverne and Shirley's leads, and they didn't want to set another precedent. The answer was brutal. They offered her $5,000 more per episode. No deal. Then came the threats. A call came in. They're going to hang a nun in the marketplace. Somers was the nun. ABC wanted to make an example of her. They didn't just want her gone. They wanted her crushed. The punishment came swiftly. Her screen time was slashed. She wasn't even allowed to be near her co-stars. Her scenes were reduced to short, disconnected phone calls, often filmed alone. A police escort brought her to and from the set. Her final appearances lasted barely a minute. Just a single, humiliating phone call from her parents' house, week after week, until she vanished entirely. The network wasn't just ending her character, they were erasing her. On set, things were tense. The fun was gone. John Ritter and Joyce DeWitt felt betrayed. Producers pushed the message, if you fight for more, you'll be punished. The damage lasted long after Somers left. She had helped make the show a hit, but by the end, she was treated like a pariah. Alan Hamill later told the full story. ABC didn't care about the fallout. They wanted to destroy the show's chemistry just to prove a point. Behind the smiles and sitcom laughs, this was a war about power, and ABC was sending a message to every actress in Hollywood. After she was fired, Somers tried to fight back. She sued ABC for $2 million. She got $30,000. That was it. One missed episode's worth of pay. The lawsuit didn't just fail. It reinforced how little power she had left. She had been one of TV's biggest stars. Now she was blacklisted. Producers, casting directors, even former friends. No one wanted to work with her. She said it felt like being shunned from your family. She had been labeled greedy, difficult, and ungrateful. For years, she couldn't get near a network show. It took decades for that image to fade. She reinvented herself in Las Vegas. Then she became a fitness guru. Later, an entrepreneur. Slowly, she built a new brand. But the cost was enormous. After she was fired from Three's Company in 1980, Suzanne Somers became one of the most talked about women in Hollywood, but not in a good way. Most people thought her career was finished. She was labeled difficult and greedy, and the offers stopped coming. But instead of disappearing, she turned to a place that wasn't known for giving second chances to women: Las Vegas. In 1982, she shocked the entertainment world by landing a headliner contract at the MGM Grand, negotiated by her husband, Alan Hamill. She performed in the same city as Frank Sinatra and Wayne Newton, two of Vegas's biggest names. Even when the MGM Grand's Theater burned down in November 1980, she didn't back out. She simply moved her show to the Las Vegas Hilton and kept going for 2.5 more years. In 1984, she was crowned Entertainer of the Year. That moment didn't just revive her image. It erased the stain of her TV firing and made her a live showbiz force. But her biggest risk came in 1988. Suzanne released a brutally honest book called Keeping Secrets. It wasn't about Hollywood gossip, it was about her father, a man whose alcoholism and violence tore their San Francisco family apart. She told the world how she grew up pretending everything was fine while living in fear. She opened up about getting pregnant at 17, marrying young, and how that pain kept repeating in her choices. Every day she wrote the book, she cried. The stories were real. The book became a bestseller, and later, a TV movie. More than entertainment, it helped others who had lived in silence feel less alone. In the early 90s, Suzanne made another wild move. She didn't land a hit show or a film. Instead, she picked up a small piece of plastic, the Thigh Master, a quirky-looking exercise tool that promised tighter thighs. She starred in the infomercial herself, making it fun, flirty, and impossible to forget. She claimed she used it in the car, at home, even in bed. It was mocked everywhere, but it sold. 6 million Thigh Masters flew off shelves in just 18 months. By 2020, that number had climbed to between 10 and 15 million. At $19.95 each, that meant nearly $300 million. And because Suzanne owned the rights, the fortune was hers. She had turned a joke into a gold mine. She still wanted a real TV comeback, though. In 1987, she starred in She's the Sheriff, a sitcom about a woman who becomes sheriff after her husband dies. It ran for 2 seasons, but never caught on. Critics were harsh, and by 2002, TV Guide named it one of the 50 worst shows ever. It was clear that the networks still hadn't forgiven her for speaking up back in the Three's Company days. But Suzanne didn't let that failure define her. She expanded her reach instead. She became a national face for Ace Hardware commercials. She wrote cookbooks that flew off shelves. She sold jewelry, skincare, and supplements. Everything she did carried her name. By the mid-1990s, she wasn't just a former TV star, she was a one-woman brand worth millions. Then came the chance she had waited for. In 1991, ABC cast her in Step by Step, opposite Patrick Duffy. The show was a modern twist on the Brady Bunch. A widowed beautician with 3 kids marries a contractor with 3 of his own. It aired every Friday night and became a family favorite. From 1991 to 1998, Step by Step ran for 160 episodes. That kind of run was rare for any sitcom, let alone one led by someone once blacklisted. The audience loved her warmth, timing, and charm. Critics began to change their tune. Suzanne had gone from TV troublemaker to America's favorite mom. But she didn't stop with fame or money. Around that same time, she started something deeply personal. The Suzanne Somers Institute for the Effects of Addictions on the Family opened in Palm Springs. Her mission was to support the children, like her, who had grown up in alcoholic homes. She helped others face the same fear, shame, and confusion she had once lived through. She worked with professionals, testified in the Senate, and led workshops. Her voice gave hope to millions affected by addiction. In 1992, she released Wednesday's Children, another powerful book. It shared the stories of 22 celebrities who survived childhood abuse. Some stories were shocking, like Cheryl Crane, who was abused by her stepfather, or Tracy Lords, who traced her troubled youth to her father's drinking. Suzanne included her own experience, again showing that trauma could be faced, and healing was possible. The book became a lifeline for readers who had never dared to speak out. She used her story to help others. All through the 90s, she gave speeches at hospitals, schools, and even the U.S. Senate. She spoke plainly and powerfully about hiding in closets as a child, about how abuse shaped her self-worth, and about therapy that helped her break the cycle. Her honesty made her unforgettable. She reminded people that your past doesn't have to define your future. Suzanne Somers was 53 when her world changed in April 2000. A routine mammogram revealed a 2.4-centimeter tumor in her breast. Most people in her situation would have followed their doctor's orders without question. Chemotherapy was the standard, but Suzanne said no. She agreed to a lumpectomy and radiation, but firmly rejected chemo. Her doctors warned her she was taking a huge risk. Fans were shocked. Medical experts were furious. But Suzanne stuck to her belief that there was another way, through lifestyle changes and alternative medicine. That single decision became the turning point in her life. It wasn't just about surviving cancer. It was about proving the world wrong. 6 years later, in 2006, she pushed her views even further with a best-selling book called Ageless. In it, she praised something called bioidentical hormone therapy, a treatment not approved by the FDA for anti-aging. She said it made her feel young again, gave her energy, and could even prevent diseases. Doctors called her claims dangerous. Experts warned that such treatments could cause cancer or heart disease. But readers believed her. Hundreds of thousands of women rushed to try it. Despite the backlash, Suzanne didn't back down. She said she was living proof it worked. Then in 2008, something terrifying happened. Suzanne was told she had inoperable cancer that had spread throughout her entire body. 6 doctors confirmed it. For 6 days, she believed she was dying. She planned for the worst and began looking into alternative treatments again. But then, a 7th doctor gave her shocking news. The diagnosis was wrong. She didn't have full-body cancer. The tests had been misread. Suzanne was relieved, but also angry. She had trusted the system, and it failed her. That moment only made her trust in conventional medicine fall even further. In 2009, she released Knockout, a book filled with interviews from doctors who supported alternative cancer treatments. Some of them rejected surgery, chemo, and radiation altogether. The book was a hit. It stayed at #1 for 6 weeks. But the American Cancer Society warned that following her advice could kill people. Suzanne stood her ground. She said mainstream medicine wasn't saving lives, and her book offered hope. Doctors called it reckless. She called it truth. In 2013, just after the Sandy Hook tragedy, she made a controversial claim. Suzanne suggested that toxins in the shooter's diet and household products might have triggered his violent behavior. The public was outraged. There was no science behind her words, just speculation. Families of the victims were hurt, and critics said she was spreading dangerous misinformation. But Suzanne didn't apologize. She believed toxins could ruin a person's health and their mind. In July 2023, Suzanne announced her cancer had returned. She was 76. She posted on Instagram, "I know how to put on my battle gear and I'm a fighter." Her fans rallied behind her. She had faced cancer before, in her 30s, and again in her 50s. But this time felt different. She refused to let fear win. Her husband, Alan Hamel, stood by her side, just as he always had. She leaned on both traditional care and her beloved alternative methods. She was determined to fight, no matter what. Then came October 15, 2023, one day before her 77th birthday. Suzanne died at home, holding Alan's hand. The family had gathered to celebrate her birthday. Instead, they said goodbye. Her death marked the end of a public life that spanned decades. She had written 27 books, built a wellness brand, and starred in iconic shows like Three's Company. But more than anything, she had challenged the way people saw medicine, health, and healing. Right or wrong, she never gave in. But her story didn't end there. In March 2025, Alan Hamel stunned the world by unveiling a digital replica of Suzanne. He had worked with a tech company to bring her voice, look, and personality back to life using AI. The virtual Suzanne could talk, remember old stories, and even express love. Alan said it was Suzanne's idea. Some saw it as touching, others saw it as creepy. Rumors spread that Alan planned to use the AI to make new episodes of Three's Company using holograms. The public was divided. Was it tribute, or was it exploitation? 3 months later, in June 2025, Alan revealed he was dating again. His new partner, actress Joanna Cassidy, who had co-starred with Suzanne in Hollywood Wives back in 1985. They had known each other for decades, but had only become close after Suzanne's death. Alan said Suzanne gave him her blessing before she died. She told him not to mope, but to live. Alan, now 88, said he was grateful to have found love again. Some fans supported him. Others were still grieving Suzanne and weren't ready to see him move on.